Hey Transtastic, my name is Luke, and this week we are talking about gender roles. A couple of announcements. First of all, I want to thank everyone for 30,000 subscribers. I'm not sure if this was mentioned on any of the other Transtastic videos or if I'm the first video up since we hit 30,000, but thank you to all our subscribers, new and old. From the people who have been here and supporting Transtastic longer than I even knew it was a thing, or longer than I've been on the channel, to the people who subscribed today. We appreciate you all. I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the others, but I know that everyone appreciates you all. That's my piece. Second of all, Q&A next week. I'm going to answer all questions down below. I mentioned this last week. I was late to filming my last week's video, and then we were reminded, oh, make sure you talk about the Q&A. So I mentioned it last week when I was meant to mention it this week, but whatever, I've mentioned it twice now, so there's no way you will miss it now. If you have any questions for me, they could be about anything, leave them down below and I'll get back to you, I promise. You can tweet me, you can message me on Tumblr, Tumblr's down below, you can ask me anonymously on Tumblr if you really want. Also on the Transtastic Instagram, I'll post, and if you've got any questions, you can ask me on that. In the trans community, gender roles are often talked about, whether or not gender roles impact your gender. Spoiler alert, they don't. So for a little bit of background information, I'm the eldest child of 4, and I was an only child for the first 5 years of my life. I didn't really have any siblings to compare my gender to, or anything like that. Growing up, I was always quite a tomboy, and because of that, I never really classified my gender as anything other than female. I was always taught that it was okay, I was just a tomboy, and that was fine, so I could do what I want, and I could still be a girl. I didn't really have a very heavily gendered childhood, like some people. I don't have any memories where I felt super pressured into doing anything that I was uncomfortable with. The only times that I was explicitly pressured into abiding by any gender roles was really with my hair and where my clothes came from. They generally came from the girls section, and I had my hair in a bob for my entire childhood, basically. Realistically, that's about all. I was quite an active kid. I played a lot of soccer, I played a lot of outside sports, but I wasn't really heavily influenced by gender roles. I never really played the games or did the things that were female. For example, at recess, when all the girls would be talking, I'd be hanging out with the boys and I'd be playing soccer and stuff, but that didn't impact my gender. I still very much identified with female. In fact, the fact that I was so against gender roles made me identify more as female. It was almost like an empowering thing that I could be who I wanted, and I could do what I wanted and still be a strong female. That's why coming out as trans kind of rocked my identity a little bit, because I kind of lost that. I think that, particularly for children, gender roles can be very important. If children are forced to behave a certain way, then that can really affect their identity later on, and it can really mess with how they feel about themselves. And I'm really lucky that I wasn't put in a position where that happened for me. I was able to do what I wanted and play how I wanted, and it didn't really impact my gender in any way. And so because of that, I don't see gender roles as linked to gender as most people do. And when coming into the trans community, I realized I didn't do stereotypically girly things, but I also didn't do stereotypically boy things either. I was a child and I did what I wanted to do, and my parents let me do what I wanted to do, and I didn't realize that wasn't normal. But maybe that was just because from the moment I started being a person, I was very clearly a masculine individual, and I was supported doing stuff like that. More background information: I have a little brother who's 5 years younger than me, and then I've got 2 little sisters who are 7 and 10 years younger than me, so it very evenly splits between me and my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, and the 2 sisters. So the 2 sisters do a whole bunch of stuff together, and a lot of the time I would be doing stuff with my brother. Not even deliberately, I just ended up behaving in a way that a brother would normally behave in, and I would do things with my brother and my dad rather than doing things with my sisters. And part of that was age, but part of that was also interest. I would much rather be outside playing soccer than being inside and painting my nails. That's just who I was, and that was respected. I was given the option to do that. I wasn't forced to do anything I didn't want to do. And I'm really glad I did that, because if I was forced to do or behave in a way that was different, I probably would be a lot more fragile in my masculinity, because I would see anything that I was forced to do as innately feminine rather than seeing them for what they were, which were just things that people do, and that was that. Like, painting my nails would not cause me dysphoria. I never wanted to do it. I never really did do it. I maybe did it once or twice because my friends wanted to do it. If I was forced to do that, or if I was encouraged to do stuff like that, I probably would be really opposed to it. It's almost like, because I wasn't forced to do all this stuff, I'm more okay with it now. But I still don't do it, not because I'm not okay with it, just because that's not who I am. Which brings me on to my second point. I'm gonna start by saying that if you identify as male or female or whatever gender, you don't need to abide by any gender roles or any gender stereotypes. But if you do, that is totally fine. I see a lot of positivity online, particularly towards masculine trans women and feminine trans guys, about how it doesn't matter what your gender is. Being feminine or masculine doesn't impact your gender identity, and that is very valid, and that's not said enough. And I'm not trying to say that this needs to be said more than those things, because in general, trans masculine people are encouraged and expected to behave in a masculine way. But at the same time, masculine trans men do exist. The way I behave has always been more masculine than it has been feminine, and that's not out of me being trans. If I was cis and female, I would still be the exact same. I see a lot of the time online, or in situations where there are masculine trans men and really feminine trans women, it's almost like people see them and think that they're trying to force themselves to be hyper masculine or hyper feminine in order to reaffirm their gender. I remember when I was first coming out as trans, one of my best friends at the time, she messaged me and was like, hey, I met this guy, he was at my makeup course and he was super feminine, and I want you to know that you don't have to be super masculine, you don't need to force yourself to be this way, da, da, da. And I was like, I've never forced myself to be this way, I just am this way. And I think that that's just as important as people who are feminine and trans to be aware that it's okay if you're polar in one way or the other. If you choose to do something or behave in a certain way, that does not impact your gender in any way. A lot of this comes down to society, and if people see someone is transitioning, they're going to expect them to behave in a certain way, and that is why there are more posts about trans men who are feminine, because that's what society as a whole is more against. But at the same time, understand that if you see a masculine trans guy or a feminine trans woman, they're not necessarily being hyper masculine or hyper feminine because they are trans and they're trying to fit into this box better. Sometimes they just naturally fit into that box better, if that makes sense. Although gender is a spectrum, some people naturally are more masculine than others, and whether they're trans or cis, that's just who they are. I don't think people need to be held to certain standards because of their gender identity. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but that's all I've got to say about this topic. I will see you guys next week. I hope you have an awesome week. Bye.